Hello everyone, and welcome to the channel where we bring you the most touching and timeless stories of real-life legends. Stories that warm your heart, open your mind, and help you learn English naturally. Today, I am going to tell you about a boy who grew up in the darkest, dirtiest streets of London. A boy who knew hunger so deeply that his stomach often ached for days. A boy whose father abandoned him and whose mother was taken away to a mental asylum. A boy who, from the age of 7, was sent to the workhouse, a place for the poorest of the poor. But that boy had a gift. He could make people laugh. With just a glance, a stumble, or a tip of his hat, he could turn sadness into joy. And that boy would grow up to become the most famous face on the entire planet. He would create a character, a little tramp with a funny mustache, a bamboo cane, and oversized shoes, who would speak to the hearts of millions without ever saying a single word. His name is Charlie Chaplin. How did a hungry, abandoned child from the slums of Victorian London rise to become the king of silent cinema? How did he use humor to fight against the darkness of the Great Depression, and then, when he finally opened his mouth on screen, to fight against a real-life dictator? This is a story of poverty, of genius, and of the profound human emotion that lies behind the greatest comedy. And as always, this story is a beautiful way to improve your English. You will learn vocabulary about cinema, history, and the language of feelings. Words like vaudeville, pantomime, slapstick, satire, tramp, exile, and legacy. You will learn about a world before sound and a man who spoke to the soul. So, let us turn back the clock. Let us begin from the very start. Charles Spencer Chaplin was born on April 16, 1889, in a poor district of South London, in England. His parents, Charles Sr. and Hannah, were both entertainers, performers in the music halls, a popular form of live variety entertainment. They sang, danced, and told jokes for a living. But their life was not glamorous. It was a struggle for survival. His father was a talented singer, but he was also a heavy drinker. His mother, known as Lily Harley on stage, was a gifted comedian and singer. She had a sweet, delicate voice that could charm an audience. But Charlie's early memories were not of the bright lights of the stage. They were of darkness, cold, and hunger. His father's alcoholism destroyed the family. He left Hannah to raise Charlie and his older half-brother, Sidney, alone. And soon, a tragedy struck that would shape Charlie's entire life. His mother began to lose her voice. One night, when little Charlie was just 5 years old, he stood in the wings of a grimy theater, watching his mother sing. Suddenly, her voice cracked and failed. The audience began to boo and hiss. The manager, desperate, pushed little Charlie onto the stage. He told the boy to sing something, anything. Charlie, this tiny, scruffy kid, stood in front of the noisy crowd. He did not freeze. He did not cry. He began to sing a popular song of the time. His little voice was clear and sweet. The audience fell silent, and then they started to throw coins onto the stage. Charlie stopped singing, picked up the coins, and then announced to the laughing crowd, "I'm going to pick up the money first, and then I'll finish the song." He was a born entertainer. But it was the last night his mother performed. Her voice never recovered. She lost her job, and soon, she lost her mind. Hannah Chaplin was a loving mother, but the stress of poverty and abandonment broke her. She began to suffer from severe mental illness. She was sent to an asylum, a dark, cold institution. Charlie and Sidney were left alone. The authorities took them and sent them to the Lambeth workhouse, a place of hard labor, thin gruel and brutal discipline. Charlie was 7 years old. He later said, "I was hardly aware of a crisis because I had lived in a continual crisis." He and Sydney were separated from their mother, and for a while, they even had to sleep on the streets. The little boy who would make the whole world laugh knew what it felt like to be utterly alone, utterly forgotten, with nothing but the cold pavement. But the theater was in his blood. His father, despite his flaws, had given him a small window into the performing world. When his mother was briefly released from the asylum, she would tell him stories of the great actors. She taught him to observe people. She would sit at the window with him, and they would watch the passers-by. "Look at the way that man walks," she would say. "He's so proud. But look at his shoes. They have holes. He is pretending." This training in observation, in seeing the hidden emotions behind the surface, became the foundation of Charlie's genius. At the age of 9, Charlie joined a children's dance troupe called the 8 Lancashire Lads. He learned to dance and perform in the bawdy, noisy music halls. His father died of alcoholism when Charlie was just 12. The boy barely cried. He was already hardened. His brother Sydney, older and more practical, joined the Navy. Charlie, still just a teenager, fended for himself, doing odd jobs, all the while dreaming of a life on the stage. His big break came when he was a teenager. He was hired by a theater company to play small parts. He was a natural mimic. He was short, graceful, and incredibly expressive. He caught the eye of Fred Carno, a legendary impresario who ran a famous comedy company. Carno's comedians were masters of physical humor, of slapstick, of precise, choreographed chaos. Charlie joined the troupe and quickly became one of its stars. He learned to do brilliant drunk scenes, falling all over the stage with perfect timing. In 1910, at the age of 21, Charlie Chaplin traveled to America with the Carno troupe. He sailed into New York Harbor and saw the Statue of Liberty. He had very little money, but his heart was full of hope. The American audiences loved him. He was a hit on the vaudeville circuit, the American version of the music hall. And then, in 1913, the magic happened. A man named Mack Sennett, the head of Keystone Studios, saw Charlie perform. Sennett ran a company that made short, frantic, slapstick films. Silent films. No speaking. Just action, chase, and pratfalls. He offered Charlie a contract. $150 a week. Charlie was terrified of film. The theater was live. You had the immediate reaction of the audience. Film was a cold, mechanical box. But he needed the money. So, he went to Keystone Studios in California. The first few films were disastrous. Sennett's directors did not understand his slow, subtle style. They wanted constant screaming and running. Charlie was miserable. He thought he had made a terrible mistake. Then, one day in 1914, while getting dressed for a film, Charlie had an inspiration. He was in the wardrobe room, looking for a costume. He needed something funny. He grabbed a pair of oversized baggy pants from another comedian, Fatty Arbuckle. He found a tiny tight coat. He swapped his shoes, putting the right shoe on his left foot and the left on his right so he would waddle. He found a derby hat, slightly too small. And he cut a small piece of fake hair and glued it under his nose to create a tiny toothbrush mustache. Then he picked up a bamboo cane. He looked in the mirror. And a character was born. The Tramp. A gentleman, a poet, a romantic dreamer, trapped in the body of a penniless, hungry wanderer. He was a failure with dignity. He twirled his cane. He wiggled his toes. He was born. The moment he put on that suit, he understood the character. He knew exactly how the tramp would walk, how he would react, how he would tip his hat to a lady before kicking a bully in the pants. He walked onto the set and Mack Sennett stared. "What are you supposed to be?" he asked. Chaplin said, "I am a tramp. I'm hungry, I'm romantic, and I'm always getting into trouble." The crew laughed. And in front of the camera, the tramp came to life. The character was an instant sensation. The films were short, 1 or 2 reels. The tramp would fall in love, try to get a job, help a beautiful girl, and then walk off alone down a dusty road at the end. But within this simple formula, Chaplin was pouring his soul. The pathos, the sadness, was as important as the comedy. He was the first to understand that in film, you could laugh and cry at the same time. Chaplin's popularity exploded. Within a few years, the hungry boy from the London workhouse was the most famous man in the world. His salary skyrocketed to $1 million a year, an unimaginable sum at that time. He was bigger than presidents and kings. He took control of his films completely. He not only starred, but he wrote, directed, edited, and composed the music. He was a dictator on his own sets, a perfectionist who would do hundreds of takes for a single gesture. He drove his actors crazy, but he created masterpieces. He built his own studio in Hollywood. And he began to make longer, more ambitious films. In 1921, he released The Kid, a full-length film about the tramp who finds and raises an abandoned baby, played by the brilliant child actor Jackie Coogan. The scene where the authorities try to take the child away from the tramp, and the tramp fights back, tearing at the door, his face a mask of tragic desperation, is one of the most heartbreaking moments in cinema history. Charlie knew what it felt like to be torn from a mother. He was pouring his childhood onto the screen. In 1925, he released The Gold Rush, a film where the tramp goes to Alaska to find gold. It contains some of the most iconic comedic sequences ever filmed, the tramp eating his own boiled shoe on Thanksgiving, twirling the laces like spaghetti, sucking the nails like chicken bones. And the famous Dance of the Rolls, where he sticks 2 forks into dinner rolls and makes them dance on the table. It was a perfect blend of imagination and hunger. But the 1920s were roaring, and a great change was coming. Sound. In 1927, The Jazz Singer was released, and the age of silent films was suddenly dead. Other silent stars panicked. Their funny voices, their heavy accents were exposed. Chaplin was defiant. He refused to make a talking picture. The tramp, he believed, was a universal character. He spoke no language and was understood by all. He said, "The silent picture is a universal means of expression. Talking pictures are a purely local affair." In 1931, he released City Lights, a silent masterpiece in a talking world. It is the story of the tramp's love for a blind flower girl. The final scene, where the girl, now able to see, realizes the strange tramp who has sacrificed everything for her as her benefactor, is considered one of the most beautiful moments ever put on film. Chaplin's own composed music fills the scene. The audience wept. In 1936, with the Great Depression gripping the world, Chaplin released Modern Times, his last silent film, though it had sound effects. The tramp is a factory worker, swallowed by the gears of a giant machine. It was a satire of industrialization and unemployment. The themes of poverty and survival that had haunted his childhood were now the struggles of the entire world. The final image of the tramp and his girl walking down a road into an uncertain future, with Charlie's song, Smile, playing, was a message of hope in the darkness. And then, Chaplin decided to speak. And when he opened his mouth, he did something incredibly bold. It was the late 1930s. In Germany, a man with a similar little mustache, Adolf Hitler, was rising to power, spreading hatred and preparing for war. Chaplin saw the evil, and he decided to use his global platform to attack it. In 1940, he released The Great Dictator, his first true talking picture, a satire of fascism. Chaplin played two roles. He played a humble Jewish barber, a tramp-like figure. And he played Adenoid Hinkle, a ridiculous, ranting, mad dictator, a direct parody of Hitler. The film was dangerous, controversial, and incredibly brave. The United States was still officially neutral in the war, and many people thought it was wrong to make fun of a foreign leader. Chaplin financed it himself. The climax of the film is one of the greatest speeches in cinema. The Jewish barber, mistaken for the dictator, is forced to give a speech to the troops. And Chaplin, the silent clown, looks directly into the camera, into the souls of the audience, and speaks, not as a character, but as Charles Chaplin the man. He speaks for peace, for democracy, for the brotherhood of man. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. The speech is a cry from the heart of the hungry boy from London, a plea for a better world. The film was a massive success, but it would cost him dearly. After the war, Chaplin became a target. The Cold War began, and a wave of anti-communist hysteria, led by Senator Joseph McCarthy, swept across America. Chaplin had never been a communist, but he had spoken out for workers, for the poor, and for an end to war. J. Edgar Hoover, the powerful head of the FBI, had been building a secret file on Chaplin for years. They considered him a dangerous leftist and a moral threat because of his affairs with young women. The press began a smear campaign against him. In 1952, Chaplin boarded a ship with his young wife, Una O'Neill, and their children to travel to London for the premiere of his new film, Limelight, a deeply personal story about an aging comedian. They were at sea when word came. The U.S. government had revoked his re-entry permit. He was in exile. He could not return to the country that had made him a star. He was heartbroken, but not surprised. He took his family and settled in Switzerland, far from the noise of Hollywood. He lived a quiet life in a beautiful manor house by Lake Geneva. He was a devoted father to his 8 children, a world away from the chaos of his own childhood. He composed beautiful film scores in his home studio. He was awarded an honorary Academy Award in 1972. When he returned to Los Angeles to accept it, he was given a 12-minute standing ovation, the longest in Oscar history. The man who had been exiled was finally welcomed home as a hero. On Christmas Day, 1977, in the early hours of the morning, Charlie Chaplin passed away peacefully in his sleep. He was 88 years old. The Little Tramp had taken his final bow. Now, what can we learn from the incredible life of Charlie Chaplin? First, comedy is born from pain. Chaplin's art was not just funny faces, it was the poetry of a man who had known hunger and loneliness. The Tramp is so beloved because he is a survivor. He shows us that you can have nothing and still have dignity. Your pain can be the source of your greatest creativity. Do not hide from your struggles. Use them to connect with others. Second, silence can be the loudest voice in the room. Before he ever spoke on screen, Chaplin communicated complex emotions to the whole world without a single word. His body, his eyes, his little gestures were a universal language. Remember that communication is more than just words. Your expression, your posture, your smile, they are all part of speaking English. When you can't find the word, your heart can still be understood. Third, be a student of life. Chaplin's mother taught him to observe the world. He watched the people around him and captured the tiny truths of human behavior. The best way to learn a language is to observe. Watch how people speak, the little phrases they use, the rhythm of a conversation. Be a student, not just of grammar books, but of life. Fourth, use your platform for good. Chaplin risked his entire career, his fortune, and his home in America to make The Great Dictator and to speak out against fascism. He could have stayed silent and safe, but he chose to be a voice for the voiceless. When you have the power to speak, even just a little English, use it to speak kind words, to defend someone, to build a bridge. Fifth, the show must go on. No matter how many times Chaplin was knocked down by poverty, by critics, by the U.S. government, he kept creating. He kept walking down the road into the unknown. Learning English is a long road. There will be times you want to quit. But the Little Tramp would tell you to straighten your hat, twirl your cane, and keep walking. And finally, at the end of the day, all we need is a little kindness. Chaplin said, "More than machinery, we need humanity." In a world that can sometimes feel cold and mechanical, be the one who brings the warmth. A simple smile, a funny gesture, a moment of genuine connection, these are the things that make life beautiful. Charlie Chaplin once said, "You'll never find a rainbow if you're looking down." And he also said, "Life is a tragedy when seen in close-up, but a comedy in long shot." You, right now, are learning English. It might feel like a tragedy of mistakes and frustrations in close-up. But take a step back. See the long shot. You are on an adventure, a journey of 1,000 little steps. You are the author of your own silent film, soon to be a talkie, full of laughter and tears and beautiful human connection. So, smile, though your heart is aching. Walk with a twirl of your cane. And remember, the world loves a tramp who is really a gentleman. Thank you for listening to this story. If it touched your heart, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this with someone who needs a smile. And let me know in the comments, which moment of Chaplin's genius is your favorite? I read every comment. Until next time, keep your head on straight, keep your heart full of kindness, and never stop walking down the road of your dreams. Bye for now.